Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I am honored to have a couple guests on today from MarketMuse, and I'm going to bring them on right away. And if people are in the chat, please let me know if you can hear us. And I can't see you guys yet. Hold on. There's some, as normal, there's some technical issues. Give me 1 second. It's live, so people appreciate. There we are. I can see you guys now. Awesome. We have Aki Balogh and Jeff Coyle. How are you guys today?
Great, great.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are going to be filtering in, so they will be watching the replay in the future. So we're just going to jump right into it, and they're going to catch up. So I would love to get an intro from each of you guys and just hear a little bit about your background and what you do at MarketMuse.
Go for it, Ashi.
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. I'm co-founder and president at MarketMuse. I started it 8 years ago. Essentially was looking to apply AI and big data, machine learning analysis to content, because at the time there just was absolutely there was no way to model content through AI for SEOs and for kind of casual use. The only tools out there were either owned by Google or were locked up in some big corporation somewhere. So wanted to essentially democratize that and give everyone the ability to analyze the quality of their content, analyze the quality of their site. So started working on that thesis for a couple of years, and then Jeff joined, and Jeff had been doing this manually with a large team for a long time. So we figured 1 + 1 = 5. Let's take the AI automation that is possible and things that are not possible, and let's add it to all the workflows and the things and the problems that Jeff is familiar with, having been a practitioner, and together we formed MarketMuse. And fast forward to today, we'll get into it, but it's really been just feels like the first step in a journey, but it's been quite an impactful journey.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Coyle, as Aki mentioned. I'm the co-founder as well, Chief Strategy Officer, which means I'm looking at kind of horizon scanning right now. What are we going to be doing at the end of this year? What are we going to be doing at the end of next year? And also some of our new innovations, like we'll talk about a little bit later with our natural language generation and our data offerings a bit. My background, I went to Georgia Tech, which I'm sure we'll probably cover, Doug, and computer science. And worked at a company called Knowledge Storm, where we were generating leads for software companies before people even had content on their sites. And then we were acquired by a major publisher, where I got stripes with large editorial teams focusing on content quality. And I like to tell those two pieces of the story because it's all about generating traffic, high volumes, generating leads, generating revenue with content. But like Aki mentioned, it was all manual. These processes we learned about, they were rough, and we were trying to impart data with our, content strategy, search engine optimization, conversion rate optimization focus for a long time. And only when, after meeting Aki and seeing some of these things that could be automated and that could be innovated against, it wasn't just about data analysis. It was about truly, focusing artificial intelligence and machine learning. Could we take it to the next level and start to, predict outcomes with content? And that's where we are today. Being able to predict outcomes with content is really the kind of the holy grail, and that's where we're operating.
Were there any other products or any other software out there at the time when you guys started MarketMuse?
Not really. I can kind of speak to it, and Jeff, I'd love to also. It's always fun when both of us are on the same, because we've told the story separately and then we come together and both kind of chomping at the bit. But essentially, you'd be surprised even now, Doug. There are still not a lot of software solutions that actually do this stuff. Most people, everybody back then, and I would argue most people even today, use keyword volume as the kind of metric. So volume and competition, obviously. basically people go into a keyword tool, they get 10,000 keywords, they sort on volume, and then just try to figure, do some sort of math with some sort of difficulty score, and then just then end up with a list of like 1,000 things, and then they look at 5 things on the list, pull it out, and that's what they do. And it is not optimized. Which if it's a small site, that's one thing. I guess you can just write a couple of articles and it's fine. But if you're going for any kind of performance, and if you're putting a lot of budget against it, it leads to massive amounts of waste. So no, not really. We had to build that data set. The only data set actually that did exist was bought by Google in 2011. And then they integrated it and they released it as a bunch of search engine updates 2013, 2014, and onward. And that became the Google Knowledge Graph. So we've tracked all the knowledge graph technologies out in the world, and there are, I can count them on one hand. And so that's kind of the game we play. So most of the folks that we talk to are still doing most of these things by hand. Content that topical optimization has really caught on, luckily, over the last couple of years. So that's something that is a use case that people now are. When I say people are familiar with it, it's like the top 10% of the marketers in the world know that it exists and are, many of them are using it. But we're still there below that, the peak tip of the iceberg. There's still a lot of just manual work, and that's one thing. And then there's like 6 other things you can do that are all related that people are usually doing by hand.
Yeah, I think when we first started in the market, there was a few keyword density analyzers, term frequency, and correlation focused solutions, but nothing was really focused on what does it mean to be an expert on this topic. If I were going to cover this topic comprehensively, how would I do that as a way of objectively measuring the quality and comprehensiveness of content, which was our earliest mission at the page level. And nobody was thinking about how do I prioritize what I should be writing. And like Aki mentioned, the industry standard of search volume and PPC competition, because that was what Google AdWords Keyword Planner provided. That was it. And even now, 90% of people are using that or a commodity data source from, a free, SEM or SEO platform. But the perils of doing it that way are starting to become more mature. And you're also seeing, situations where, people are realizing that term frequency isn't getting it done. And they realize that in 2 ways. One, it just doesn't provide incremental value, or they do it, they have a caffeine surge, and then they have a caffeine crash. And that's really something that we kind of focus on, is that we want you to be doing this from the lens of that which a subject matter expert would. And that's something that now, frankly, nobody has built still.
And to get sort of granular, Jeff, how would that manifest itself on a piece of content?
Right. It really what it boils down to is the content is how it would manifest if you were doing it wrong effectively. Aki kind of mentioned it, but if you're sort descending by search volume, and that's the word you're trying to use, or that's what you're targeting, if you think that that's the pages you should create, and that's how an expert would have built content, it's not going to work out in the long run. And that's what you see. What I always like to say is a sort descend on a Google AdWords Keyword Planner result is a great way to figure out the pedigree of your competitor. Because you can go out and see, are those the pages they have? And that's it, right? First of all, I can predict what they're going to do next. Second of all, that's not how experts' brains work. That's not how real content strategists think. That doesn't cover the funnel. Right? So how it typically manifests is 1 page per word, huge red flag, right? Or you've covered the stuff in a sort descend on a search volume, right? If you can find one of those 2 scenarios, you have a weak competitor. But it's also how it manifests when someone's thinking correlatively or based on term frequency.
Got it. Very good. Well, let's see here. I see some folks in the chats. We'll just say hello to Caitlin, Adrian, David, 24/7 Marketing, And Mirik, we will be answering some questions towards the end. So if you have any specific questions about MarketMuse, that's great, or content marketing, that'll be really good too. We're going to talk about a lot of different things here. So I know one of the very recent rollouts with MarketMuse was First Draft, and there's probably a few other things behind the scenes as well. So can you tell us about some of the experience so far since you've rolled out First Draft in MarketMuse?
Yeah, sure. So MarketMuse First Draft is our natural language generation platform. And I like to kind of say it's our natural language generation platform because we built it. It is really the only in-market competition. There's a few open source things that are about to be launched out, but to GPT-3 from OpenAI, which you can also buy as a resold product through Microsoft. And I'd say that has been a long-term journey. And Aki, I hope you add some of this because we both have our experiences internally as we've looked to innovate this. But we were inspired by a lot of early natural language generation platforms that were very template focused or rules engine focused. And we knew we had some technology that would innovate against what was being done in the market by people like Washington Post with Heliograph, people like Narrative Insights and a couple of Aria, for example. Very template focused, very really specific use cases for financial or for kind of macro SEO. Companies like Myers Media Group who are working with databases. And so what we said was we can do this better already. And then we took shots at it 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and we were like, nothing we built is ready because it's so expensive to build. And then with the most recent innovations in the space and the most recent kind of technological improvements, we said, oh, wow, this is actually becoming affordable. Being able to produce high quality content at scale is possible. And now we're in the journey of improving the quality of the output, improving the quality output. And we like to think that we think about this differently because we're trying to tune it such that it's written like an expert would have written it. We're our own best critics. We know it's going to be an ongoing process. Our initial parlays into the market, we feel we've got comparables, but we're not good enough with comparables. We've got to put out content that really is going to be able to be looked at. Our goal is to amplify experts, is to really take someone who's an editorial lead or a writer, and this is inspirational for them. It's going to make their job easier. It's not replacing, it's giving them the tools so that they know, here's the topics I need to cover. Here's the questions I need to answer. Here's the internal and external links I need to include. And here's like a way that somebody could have covered this. When you combine and you build these things as building blocks, that's when you can be successful with natural language generation. When you look at content and receive it and you judge it, and you start to think, oh, this isn't quite right, or this isn't as good as I could have done. Well, you're not the right use case yet. You haven't gotten there. But our brains are broken. We judge good or bad very quickly. So what we're seeing is teams that are looking at this as inspiration and a way to amplify their expertise. They know they're going to have to create still. They're having major benefit already. But what I'll tell you is the rest of 2021 is going to be pretty exciting in natural language generation, and our qualities, the model quality just gets better and better every day. Aki, I know you, from the standpoint of the first forays, I'd love you to add some color there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the problem we were looking to solve, really two problems. One is, what do I write about and how do I write about it? And that's all of the products that we have built either answer one or both of those problems. The thing about AI NLG, natural language generation, is that everybody gets excited about it because it's a very straightforward, the output is a very straightforward use case. Here's an article, you don't have to write it, the machine writes it. And the vision of that, the hope of that, I think there we go, my video is an example of tech not always working perfectly. The hope of that is awesome because it feels like a lot less work. But the reality of that is that there are a lot of steps that go into that. First, you've got to figure out what topics you have a competitive advantage of. You need some sort of commercial insight that your business has some sort of differentiated value for your business or business strategy. Then there's a content strategy. Then there's content planning, looking at what do I have, what do I not have, what are the next 5 articles I should work on, given my site and my where I want to play and my campaigns. I mean, there's all this kind of pre-work. Then it's about structuring. Now I have a topic I want to focus on. How do I structure the answer? A couple more steps. What level of intent, and then you get to a final kind of outline that can be turned into AI. And in that regard, it's very different from like a self-driving car, because self-driving car, you'd imagine you'd sit in, you'd put in an address, and you just end up where you need to be. And there's absolutely no vision or interpretation or strategy. Content is different. And what we found is that when people just try to jump to the last step and they just want to hit a button and bam, here's the content, the output doesn't really work, and it doesn't really have that human intelligence or synthesis or knowledge in there. So we've evolved our product to basically be just the next step in a long chain of things that one must do to really, because the goal is you want to perform well in SEO, and if you miss one of the steps, you're not going to perform well. So that's kind of one thing. The other thing is that we're engineers and we like to build our own engines. So our approach to AI generation was, let's build it ourselves by hand so we can really understand it. And the other products out there, we get a lot of questions about how does it differ from ABCDE, but there really are only a couple of engines out in the world. GPT-3 has 4 or 5 engines, I think, like DaVinci, and they've got a couple of engines that are out there. And we have our own engine, which does not use GPT-3. And so we can fiddle with it and tweak it and basically customize it to the specific use case that we're focused on, which is just makes it kind of an apples and oranges comparison. But that's really where we're going with this.
I think a big differentiator is that these folks basically have API licenses, or what they reference as prompts. In most cases, direct with OpenAI, or can be as a reseller agreement with Microsoft. And what they're building is skins and user interfaces. We're tuning just constantly on the back end and innovating on that side of it, where with few exceptions, they have standardized access to an API. It'd be a lot like, you building a tool with SEMrush data and then saying that, you built SEMrush. Big difference.
Got it. And you mentioned you're engineers, so you thought, hey, we want to try to build this on our own. Were there any assumptions that you made early on that turned out to be completely wrong?
Yeah, I got one. It's that people want to receive finished content in a Google Doc as the output. It's the brain break, and that was the biggest mistake, right? That we immediately realized it's got to be part of their process, because we don't know their process. And Aki described it beautifully. That research, planning, prioritization, briefing, creating, editing, optimizing. People go through different steps for all of those things. And to go from, I want to see an article about how do you get bees out of your garage, and then we deliver that, and they read it, guess what? You got 2 outcomes. I like it or I don't, when you do it that way. And so we've got to make it part of the process. That was the biggest thing that we learned by getting, our teeth punched in, frankly, on this, is like, no matter what we would have provided, if you are an expert, you're going to read that and you're going to see things that you could have done better. And so people, naturally, if they're testing this out, are going to give it something they know. I'm going to give it something about beer. I'm going to give it something about computer science. I'm going to see what it says, right? And I'm going to judge it. And so what we learned was that's actually not the path. And I think that a lot of people are realizing that, or they're going to realize that the hard way. After that first drug wears off, you're going to realize, is this thing useful? Is this, short form where I type in, fun things and I see text, how much longevity does that have? And what we want to do is really enhance and amplify the true writer, content strategist, affiliate marketer, creator, and optimizer experience with this technology. And we're going to do it.
And
I'll add two more learnings to that just over the years. It would be interesting to anyone who's an entrepreneur, which is all of us, everyone listening to this probably in many ways. One was that when people think about AI, they typically think of the machine doing the work for you. And they think of a future where humans basically are just kind of like sitting around or something floating in some sort of a pool of sustaining liquid, and then robots are zipping around and they've replaced us and they think for us and then they like eat us or something. That's not the AI. That could happen one day, who knows, happen in the Matrix, but it's AI is really more human augmentation. So in the early days, we would go to experts and say, look, we've got this thing, it's going to give you insights, and the expert would feel some sensitivity and say, look, I've been writing about blah, blah, blah for 25 years. Surely it can't know more than I do. And it doesn't, but it knows differently. It has a pattern recognition ability that humans can't match, and the humans have a thinking and synthesis ability the AI can't match. But if both of them work together, actually the best results we've seen were from experts using the system. An expert gets a lot more value out of it than a novice. So that was a really big one. It's just that AI means human augmentation, not replacement. And the second big learning for us at some point along the line was requesting budget and the ROI, because SEO and content people are absolutely like us. We absolutely know that content works really well. And if you crush it on SEO, it's going to have so many downstream impacts, not only the lead gen, but your sales team can use the content to fuel their sales conversations and their knowledge bases. And all of these are so obvious to us. And these obvious things are completely non-obvious to money people. So VCs, your CFO, most C-level people, even sometimes the CMO just hasn't yet understood that. For example, when I look at brands, SEMrush actually publishes a list, or they used to publish a list of the biggest brands in terms of search traffic, like Fandom is one of them. It's a huge brand based on its actual search performance. But people tend to think of, Geico and Nike and Super Bowl commercials, and that shift from enterprise to like web, enterprise 2.0, where you're just in everybody's brains on the web, that's a big deal. And so we found that we need to take a role and build tools to explain the ROI impact of how the tremendous amount of money that this would make, so that a CFO can just check the box and allocate the budget to it. That was always it's like the difference between Main Street and Silicon Valley, or Wall Street and Silicon Valley. We've had to explain that a lot, and that was always a big hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, naturally building expert systems is tough too, because you're, like you said, like in content specifically, and your audience will know this very well. You're judging at the individual page level, but you're also judging at the cluster or the niche level, the concept level. All the content you write, even if it's 100 pages on this one topic, right, all contributes to the overall authoritativeness and success of that site or site section. And that's really hard to communicate to someone who hasn't even bought on to the fact that content's valuable. So it's like, you think about it, right? You're like, okay, well, content, okay, what is valuable to me? Sales, leads, whatever it is, whatever I associate with it. So I'm only going to maybe give direct attribution. And then I'm trying to tell you that, like, no, Doug, actually every article we wrote, even that basic definition article, provided enough energy and power and momentum to have led to these leads and these sales. Man, that's a tough sell. And that's really that's sell. And SEOs are not familiar enterprise buyers, right? They don't buy expensive things typically. And so that also, they're unfamiliar with complex sale. So they internally like to build, they like tools, they like small things, like pieces. So enterprise systems have long in the market been maligned. Actually, they've kind of been like, most SEOs are like, oh man, I had to buy that blankety blank system because my company made me, these large companies, right? And that also added another layer to kind of learning. So we can go on all day with the mistakes we make, but for us, we really stood on building great solutions that actually work, and now we have to make sure that everybody knows how to use them, and that's our current, just ongoing every day. Is we love watching somebody who's truly, like Aki mentioned, augmented and enhanced and amplified. We watch those sessions and we're just like, yes, this person gets it. But then you also watch the same one where someone walks in, clicks a few buttons, you can see they get frustrated, and you're like, okay, how could we have done that better? And that's just on. Whenever you're building software, that's the yin and the yang,
Oh yeah, and we have a comment over here from 24/7 Marketing. I love the focus of MarketMuse on topics instead of keywords. The reports make it so much easier to actually write articles that include related concepts instead of related keywords and some of the mistakes. Yeah, any you guys are, for the podcast listeners, the guys are cheering back there, but any specific comments on that?
I gave the devil horns on that one for anyone not watching. But basically, what I was saying there is, the cool thing about what they say in that comment is we're also giving insight on how to differentiate your content. And I think that a lot of people, especially in the affiliate marketing space, they're instructed on how to copy their competitors. It doesn't work at scale. There's a lot of reasons why, but some of the things that really, when you do real topic analysis and really focus on what it means to be an expert, you start to see the things that differentiate your content. And then your writers can run with that and truly write content that's special. And that has an impact. That has an impact on everything you do now and everything you'll do in the future, because you're differentiated, stickier content, differentiated. People have an expectation. So then when you do write that guide, more people care about it and you already had some foundation.
And that comment, by the way, that makes me, that's the reason why me and probably Jeff as a founder get up in the morning, is to see that, because 7 years ago, almost nobody understood that. It was maybe 1 out of 100 people knew that, because everybody just was looking at keywords. And now, and so that the market there has developed, which is great. And there's a lot of content, and whether we call them entities or topics or related something concepts, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing, and everybody knows that inherently. Now we're there with content clusters. So content clusters as a concept have been around, but the ability for people to kind of wrap their heads around it and think about a cohesive cluster strategy is the next level, and we're trying to make that easier and easier with software. But that's where most of the value. The trick with content clusters is we don't have a topic ranking engine. We just have keyword ranking system. We have keyword trackers, so we could put in a keyword, but we don't have a system where you can put in a concept and it tells you your cluster and all the other concepts on the web for everything. That would be multidimensional and very hard to visualize. So what we do in MarketMuse is just, we look at it one site at a time, and we can connect those clusters for one domain. But people are still kind of, it befuddles people. Why is something ranking in, I'm trying to optimize for this thing, but then this other thing is also going to be impacted. And those second order effects are hard for people to kind of think through or visualize, but that is where it's at. I mean, basically, if somebody writes the best article on a concept, it's going to perform for a lot of keywords. And if they connect that thing to another thing or other things, it's going to do really well, and that's the way to success. It's just at that point it gets challenging to visualize.
Yeah, and we've shortcut that by really focusing on kind of I guess industry gotchas, so things people are not doing well in their processes. And one of those is we've innovated in the difficulty space. Right, so we have a solution that will give you your existing authority on a topic. So how often do you have success? What's your breadth of coverage, your depth of coverage? When you cover this topic, how often are you doing it well? basically, and then trying to use that to predict how hard it will be for you to grow or rank on a topic. But personalizing that, because we know that unpersonalized metrics for difficulty are the reason why it's broken. It's broken. Everyone's broken who's using it, because you're having to guess. You're having to really guess. And there's a reason why I can go write the best article ever written on the brand new iPhone, and I can go put it on jeffsblog.com, or I could throw that same article on CNET. It's going to rank real well on CNET and not well on my site. And the answer to that question isn't just links. And for years, people have thought links was that only answer. It's never been the answer. It's never been. But there hasn't been anybody who's known why and has also been inspired to build software around that why. And that's really where we step in and say, yep, we can tell you with pretty good degree of certainty that if you cover this really well, it's going to be successful. You just have to, no shortcut.
Oh yeah, talk about another lesson learned in this voyage is back in 2016, Jeff and I and our team built a set of insights for a large healthcare provider, and it was like a database of 5 million things that they should do. And we gave them the database, and they're like, gosh, this is cool, but what the heck do I do with this data? Like, oh, you have to, query it. We're like, you know what, Jeff, we probably should just give them like 5 things to do these 5 things, and then tomorrow do these other 5 things. Okay. And that was our solution. So that's the prioritization opportunity framework we've got now.
Yeah.
Got it. So, quick note from us, a couple sponsors here. I'm just going to leave you guys on the screen in the interest of me not messing up and like disconnecting or something like that. So, Ezoic, they have a new piece of functionality called LEAP. It replaces the Site Speed Accelerator, which hopefully with this new, I don't know when it's coming out, but the Core Web Vitals update, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to get green. Ezoic is rolling out LEAP on a small scale right now for beta users. All the functionality is free if you're monetizing with Ezoic. Do you guys know the people at Ezoic? Nice. No, not yet, Aki?
Okay. I'm looking it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I know Ezoic real well. That's really cool that they have a Core Web Vitals solution. I think that's really the hot thing to be putting out. So it's going to see who's going to have the best item. That's exciting that they are, because they know their game.
Very cool. And are you guys as a company over at MarketMuse doing anything for Core Web Vitals or Site Speed or anything?
We are not innovating in that space right now. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like specifically for your site, are you fixing anything up? Like low?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. You gotta.
Yeah, but we're actively partnering with. Actually, I gotta get Ezoic on our radar. But we're partnering with these companies.
Yeah. But we are also updating our entire site right now, just with that focus. We've already have pretty great scoring on that, but we're kind of going for the gold, because frankly, it's like the having a great architecture. It's what gets you the ticket to the party, and then the content is the party. If you don't have the invite to the party, you can't get there, and that's where technical SEO really makes it so that you can succeed with content. If you've got those problems, sometimes you can't even get in the door.
Indeed, yeah, I think you nailed it. I think if you do good enough and you're not the worst in your little cohort, you're probably going to be okay. But you can't completely ignore it. And I'm happy to introduce you guys to my contacts over at Ezoic. I know the CMO, so we'll follow up later. And we have a couple questions which they fit in perfectly with the Q&A segment sponsored by Niche Website Builders. So I'm going to read out a couple of these here. So Merrick says, can AI content generating companies employ people to work with AI to refine content before delivering to buyers? And any thoughts on how it would work with MarketMuse?
I don't even have thoughts on that. That's an offering we have. So yeah, absolutely. Giving people, but what we've learned is there's more to it. You still got to have, a shared understanding about what refined content or tuned content is. You got to really work on that brief together. at least go through a few motions, get a few pieces of validated feedback. But that's something that, can and should be done as a service still. And it's something that, we provide as part of our professional services org called Final Draft.
Final Draft. I like the clear naming I'm an engineer too. And it's just the most obvious name. You got first draft, you got final draft. There's briefs in there too, right?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where that was actually feedback I received from a community that I'm in, where you are also. It was saying, like, don't tell people it's done. You have to make sure they know clearly that it's an early version. So we're continuing to think about how we position that, but always, we want you to think that this is helping you succeed, and it's not ready to roll. And that you don't want that, because then you're going to judge it very harshly, and that's really what's going to make and break these companies.
Very good. And Michael says, I know you can model a specific domain for competitive analysis, but how can one combine the use of other search analytic tools such as Rio SEO, Bright Edge to work with MarketMuse? I don't know the context of the question exactly, or the other tools. Do you guys know what he's talking about?
I'll let Aki field part one, and I'll roll part two. And hi, Mike. How are you?
Yeah. I was going to say it's a familiar name in a small world. Basically, MarketMuse is a huge multiplier to a Bright Edge deployment or Conductor or whatever people are using for rank tracking and tracking the performance. Basically, these are all BI systems that show you the historical performance of your keywords and pages, and they're adding topical features, and shows you it like any good BI system. It shows you looking backwards what worked and where are we and where's competition potentially getting ahead of you. So those are really great insights. We're a predictive system, so we show you, hey, you might want to place your bets here, or have you considered this angle, or if you have a particular objective, here's the optimal way you should make that plan to reach that. And they work extremely well together. So it's really now in terms of the actual usage, you might have to export from both systems and map it. It depends on the we don't have any hard integrations between these systems because we're pretty agnostic to whichever rank tracker or whichever BI system or whichever CMS you use, but they are much more powerful when used in conjunction.
Yeah, I like to say BYOK. Bring your own keywords, because if you want, we'll come up with the topics by reading your content, right? But if you're looking at a competitor, you can actually inject a competitor in MarketMuse and understand where they have strengths and weaknesses. But you can also take all their topics and all their keywords and apply them to your site, and that's a real big differentiator, because I can see everything that a competitor's site is doing. How great am I at that? How much authority do I have? How much advantage or disadvantage do I have? And so if you're looking at the outputs of a Bright Edge or a Rio or a Conductor, it's a bunch of words come from a database and then various slices and dices of them with some other tools that layer on top. If you are to use that as your tracker, that's great. Pull out the outputs and test your assumptions. Is what I'd say. Build that plan only with that offering, then bring it into MarketMuse and see how much more fidelity you receive. That's way that we have, huge customers who have learned that we take it to the last mile for prioritization. And there would have been so much waste had they not taken that last step to adjust what they were focused on. And there's a lot of blind spots. I mean, you naturally have bias. If you're covering a topic, you might have forgotten some things. And if you're doing it keyword focused, string, substring focused, which all those platforms do, you're going to be stuck in the strings versus things situation. And then MarketMuse is going to give you that additional inspiration to say, oh, wow, here's the answer. Here's the question I need to answer within this article. Here's a topic that I would have missed if I was just using substrings. When you combine those things together, what you end up with is a better content presence, a better content inventory, and then cycle it back into those platforms and lather, rinse, and repeat. I mean, those are the teams that are crushing it with us.
Very good. And I want to highlight something you mentioned earlier, Jeff. Actually, you even prompted me and said, "Hey, we should probably talk about this." So I will give credit where it's due, and it helps me be a lazier interviewer. But in a lot of the stuff that I do, it's all about how can we do this and get results as quickly as possible. Essentially, the get rich overnight situation, which, I mean, I'm in the make money online industry, so I mean, that's just how it is sometimes. And we really need to be focusing, and I try to encourage people to look at long term. Are we making a decision for the next 8 weeks or 6 months or like 6 years? And you have a long time frame, you can make different decisions that are actually better and will lead to more positive results in the future. So can you talk about how the intersection of like using MarketMuse fits in with a long-term content vision?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And what I'll say is kind of, I'll speak to the don't, right? I think if you're not doing that, I think if you have an explicit plan that you're trying to get rich quick with this site, right? You're going to take a lot of risks that you're not going to take if you are working at a large entity or a business that you wish to grow with content. If the business is content and there's no other way, I mean, it's almost like a direct flip type content or arbitrage business, a lot of times it can be tempting to try to get rich quick. But I've analyzed all of these ways that people do this, and Aki's seen some of this data. It's terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying. And we also get a lot of people that come to us, frankly, for a shoulder to cry on, because they've looked at some correlative systems, and I won't go further than that for doing this. But the examples, always ask for the examples of those sites, because you'll see they have huge swings, huge. And if you work for a reasonably sized company, if you work for a startup, if you work for an agency and you're servicing clients, what we're seeing in our market is people who have learned from that space, applying that to those markets, and it's having a devastating impact. They're ebbing and flowing with Google updates quite frequently. They're building houses of cards that aren't based on that foundation of expertise and authority. And that's a big problem. So if you're comfortable moving on once your site crashes, you can try to get rich quick and build a CD laddering process. And I've seen it work with portfolio builders. But the problem is you're actually building a CD ladder that some of the ladder rungs are going to fall out to zero. And so you've got to do a lot of things that, are stealthy and not so tactical. When you build for the future, first of all, getting rich quick in content sites is twofold. This is the big mistake that I see. It's direct cash, but it's also you're building something you can sell. And one of the biggest parts of evaluating an affiliate site for real, and I know this from people who have businesses that evaluate affiliate sites in detail, does this have longevity? Is the quality there? Or am I buying on a spike? And people will not buy on spikes anymore. They're too smart for that. Ask anyone at any of the brokerages. It's something that everyone's looking for. They are not buying on spikes. They're waiting for signals that this has longevity, because they don't want to buy and die. I mean, that was what was happening. If you look at the history of sales from 2 years ago, whether you're looking at any one of the brokerages, now you're seeing a lot bigger multipliers for sites that have stood the test of time and are written from the lens of expertise. And everyone in your audience should be thinking about that, because that's where the big money is going right now. Those are where the big multiples are going. It's real high quality content sites with communities, with social channel traffic. They're a true active, comprehensive portfolio play from a channel development perspective. The SEO traffic only thin content arbitrage sites, I mean, you're knocking like 5 or 6 X multipliers off from where you could be if you did it right. So you've got to make that cost benefit analysis.
Well said.
Yeah,
and that actually, go ahead, Aki. Sorry.
No, just to tack on comment, we've seen a lot of challenges with your money, your life, sites and the level of risk that that business owner takes on. And when somebody goes into that business, I'm not saying that that's something that everybody should avoid, because there is value there, of course, but it also corresponds with a significant level of risk. And we've seen people fairly or unfairly be penalized, and then we have to help mop it up. And sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's kind of like sometimes we just have to move on into a different category. And that's been just something that's just a level of risk that somebody takes on, versus other topics where it's just things that have been just kind of flowing and building, compounding year over year, and it just becomes more and more valuable over time. Those are great, and those are always success stories.
That's genius, Aki. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you know you're in a toxic zone, or a zone that will ebb and flow a lot, you got to also question. And the sad thing about this is, we've seen in various spaces that people are acting like aggressive affiliates, but they're doing it on businesses that require sustained success. And the outputs are devastating. I mean, the output of believing that you can trick Google over time for a real business, no, you can't. You will get caught. And doing things that are, term frequency focused or very correlation focused over time, it's just, there's no longevity there. And we can show you piles of examples. It's just hard in this industry. It's really hard to show examples without calling people out. So we really focus on how to do it right, and building trust, that this is going to be the path to longevity.
Right on. All right. Well, I have to get paid by a sponsor, so I'm going to roll the ad. And guys, we'll just sit quietly for a couple minutes here. Hopefully it won't disconnect or anything like that. And this is brought to you by ODYS, ODYS for age domains. So let's roll this clip. They have some backlinks. So let's go take a quick look here. You can set up filters. I have a few set up here. There's actually quite a few different domains, more than the 88 that we see here. And I found one, the skill set, that we're going to take a deeper look at today. So the skillset.org has a little bit of history here. So it's a highly brandable.org name about skills, IT, and careers. And let's actually go take a quick look at the Wayback Machine and the web archive here, so we can see what used to be on the site. So this snapshot is from July 27th, 2018. So it was a project from the World Economic Forum and the IT industry community in cooperation with the forum's Education, Gender, and Work System Initiative. There's a lot of corporate, it sounds like a mission statement or something, but it looks like a legit site. And they talked about skill sets, like you could imagine, and future-proofing, technology, IT, all the buzzwords that we're looking for. You can see they had some big partners, including a company I used to work at, Accenture, and a lot of other big ones, Salesforce, Cisco, HP Enterprises, and so on. I'm not going to read everything here. So you can actually take a pretty good look at the site once you have a look. Now, the important thing with these age domains is the backlinks. So of course, we're going to talk about monetization strategy, but one thing that's pretty awesome over at ODYS is they show you the authority links over here, and they have a kind of a mind map situation. It's sort of a graphical representation here. It's a little hard to see if you really dig in, and it doesn't give you a huge amount of information, but of course you can go to a tool like Ahrefs, like I've done over here, and you can see there's a couple DR90 links in store here. There's a DR91, and actually I'm just going to scroll down just so you can kind of get an idea of the scope of the backlinks here. So a lot of really high We have SAP.com, Business Insider, and so on. So I'm not going to read everything out here. Some of them are from what appears to be like the different SAP sites. So I imagine those kind of roll into one. One cool thing is you could monetize this site with affiliate. All right, so monetization angle. So they don't tell you too many things here. So I'm just going to riff a little bit, because my hunch is you could probably be an affiliate for courses that teach skill sets. So quick little example for me personally, I am a PMP. That's a project management professional. And every 3 years I have to get a professional like recertification for the PMP. PDUs, it's professional development units. So I have to go and take courses in different areas. I have to demonstrate that I have been practicing as a project manager and or teaching and learning new material via courses. A site like this, theskillset.org, could be a place where you curate, you provide affiliate links, maybe reviews, maybe you put together just a directory of places where I can earn PDUs. And guess what? There's a whole bunch of other professional certifications that would also apply. So this site is one that you could pick up, and let me go back and share my screen. This site is one that you could pick up. Of course, it's just the domain, and then from there you would have to, work on it yourself. It has a history from 2018, and the cool part here is you're hopefully skipping the sandbox. If you are starting a site and you're in a niche where the domain makes sense, then you can put content on the site, hopefully rank much quicker than spawning up a brand new site. If you join ODYS, ODYS, using my affiliate link, you'll get $100 credit in your account. I appreciate the support. So even if you're not in the domain market right now and you're not looking to buy something right away, it's worth it to go check it out, open up your account, and let them know that you appreciate the support that you provide, or that they provide, for these live streams and the Doug Show. So thanks a lot to ODYS, and let's get back to the live stream. All right, I think it worked, and you guys are still there. You could hear me too, right?
Yes. It was great.
ODYS is great. That's a great domain on that ad. Somebody needs to go buy that.
I know. I have a friend. I should have emailed him first, but I already recorded the spot. Hopefully he'll see it, but he's potentially could use something like that. So very cool. Well, we got a few more questions. I see Michael asked, I'm wondering if there is a value to use MarketMuse to further improve the edge data on content objects to aid ontology.
Knowledge graphs.
Knowledge graphs. Okay. Stretching my verbal limits here with words. And okay, ML retrieval, more buzzwords. All right, guys, what's the answer to this question?
The funny thing I'm chuckling about is this is actually the very first use case that Jeff and I ever talked about is pool party. Yes. And yes. Short answer is yes. And the long answer is we can also do more custom kind of data dumps from the knowledge graph system to help in that. So that's something where we should talk about it offline. But the data we would use is mostly written into the software, but we would do some large scale exports and scripts and stuff.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is one thing most people don't know, as Aki mentioned, this technology that was bought by Google, some of the Freebase, the taxonomy the original taxonomy that Google has manually ported. By the way, they manually ported it, and then they've added to. You're starting to see that manifest a lot more. A lot of the folks probably listening to this are search engine optimization professionals. In SERP features or search engine results page features, and that was the second part of Mike's question. When you see the right rail, when you see like a box on there that has other related concepts, if you're on your phone, you'll see the topic view sometimes. All of that's being driven by that type of technology. And you can actually look at those search engine result page features and decode them, which is kind of fun. So I can actually decode that right rail and know where in the knowledge graph it came from. And that's when stuff gets very sexy. So we are, we're working on manifesting that for people so they can actually see that. If you go type in Boston Terrier into Google, the right rail has other related breeds, right? Where does that come from? And that's something that we are, able to kind of get to a deeper level than most technologies. So in a very similar way to the way that they do it. A lot of people are typing that word in. Search volume is going to spike. You better go write content on it. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. So the hour has flown by. So we're coming towards the end, and I wanted to ask a few more on-topic things, but instead I'm going to ask off-topic things. So Jeff, you and I went to Georgia Tech. Sorry, Aki, I'm going to leave you out momentarily. But I'm curious, what years were you there? And then we could talk about the dorms and dining hall stuff, just normal stuff.
I was there the same years you were there. So I got in 97 fall, and I got out summer of 01. Computer science program, and then I stuck around for a bit. But I started with Knowledge Storm while I was still in school, so I didn't change my lifestyle until about you left in 2003. But yeah, so they were right about the same time. So,
right, and I was a little slower. It was like the 6.5 year co-op program, and towards the end, I was thinking, well, I could go to the real world, or I can take 12 hours a semester here and stretch it out. So I did that instead. So where did you live like the first couple years? I was in Fitton over on the west side initially.
That's awesome. I only spent 1 quarter in a dorm over on the west side, and then I spent time amongst on campus in housing and then Home Park. I lived in Home Park for most of my time there, and then I got in that spot as quickly as I could. I had the good fortune of having older brothers who went there, so I was able to get things like parking passes a little bit earlier than I was supposed to, and other stuff like that. So anyway, but yeah, that was my experience. We were hacking those systems early on, but yeah, it's an amazing place, and you see that with Georgia Tech. The ecosystem there, especially for startups, has gotten so exciting. And Aki and I have a lot of great connections that are Georgia Tech grads people have started businesses. I mean, you've got, a couple of the most amazing incubators in the world now coming out of Georgia Tech. So.
Yeah, and they let me go there too. So it's good company to be in overall. And I haven't been back on campus in many years. I bet I would hardly recognize a lot of the spots. So have you been recently for any of the startup activities or whatever?
I have, just to visit folks. I am a big college baseball fan, so I've snuck into a few games this year. It's amazing. Like basically across the highway, they own the entire many blocks. Those were like ruins basically when we were there, when we first started there. Now it's all built up. There's an amazing hotel, all kinds of businesses, and that's where Tech Square, that's where the main Tech Square and all that is based on. Basically what used to be a scary place to walk around and is now a thriving ecosystem for startups. Is pretty wild. So yeah, Georgia Tech Hotel is all brand new. I mean, yeah, it's worth going back, and they the beauty and the money they put in there is very inspiring, because you won't recognize it if you haven't been there in a while.
No, in fact, I parked in some of those ruins, and I remember one late night I was coming back and I had to go through that tunnel under the highway. Yeah, I mean, bad stuff happened there, right? I mean, it was not a place to be, and I'm like, why am I parking here? Now it's a pretty nice neighborhood overall.
I've been through that tunnel. I know what's up. It's kind of scary. I have a few nightmares about it. I had somebody get a beer can thrown at him coming out of that tunnel one time. Took it on the head. So yeah, that's a fun story. Yeah,
Oh,
but yeah,
yeah.
you don't want to be in that tunnel.
Yeah. I take it was empty. No one would throw out a good beer can, but
Oh no, it was full. It left a nice shiner. Wow. Yeah.
oh man. All right. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and I'll let you guys both sort of sign off. And if you have any, parting words or anything like that, where people can find you, all those details, I'll just turn it over. Aki, why don't you go first?
I'll just say go blue. And if any Michiganders are out there, and just email me, aki@marketmuse.com.
Yeah, one good fortunate thing about being a Georgia Tech grad is that we don't typically have to play Michigan in any sports, because that would be real bad in most cases. But anyway, yeah, Jeffrey_Coyle on Twitter, Jeff@marketmuse.com. Any content challenge, we probably seen it. So please give us a call. We love this stuff. We do it all day, every day, and it's a pleasure. And thank you so much, Doug.
All right, thank you guys, and definitely
Thank you,
check
Doug.
out MarketMuse. And guys, I think we're going to be in the green room right after this, so you can hang on once I end the feed. So thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.